Things are running great. Revenue is up, growth is on pace, except things feel hard. Hi, I'm Sarah Wilson, fractional COO and operational turnaround partner for SMB. I help businesses struggling with complexity and challenges in their back office. I work with founders to install scalable, repeatable processes. This is something I see all the time in growing businesses. On paper, things look great. Revenue is up, the team has grown, and there are processes in place. Now, while processes might not seem super efficient, to an outsider, they are known by everyone, working relatively well, and of course, were put in place for really good business reasons. There's even dashboards and metrics that the business finds useful and relevant. But as you dig a little deeper inside the business, things still feel heavier than they need to. Leaders are spending more time in the weeds than they expected. Teams are really busy. Leaders are spending more time in the business than they expected. Teams are busy, but results feel inconsistent. One week, everything seems to click, and then the next week, there are tons of fires to fight. All that makes it feel like everyone's pushing uphill. When leadership tries to jump in and fix, the instinct is usually the same. More reporting, more KPIs, maybe another system or another tool, another software subscription, and maybe even another hire. Now, these things can help, but most of the time they're solving the wrong problem because the issue isn't visibility. It's actually how the business runs day to day. When execution starts to feel inconsistent, it's quite common for leadership to assume that it's data related. That's a reasonable assumption. If we could just see what's happening more clearly, for example, if we had the right metrics or the right reporting, we'd be able to manage the business better, right? And that makes sense because that's the problem itself shows in the numbers. Performance can vary week to week. You might see timelines of things drift, margins might be down, or whatever number or metric starts to shift a fair bit. Those are where you usually see the start of the problem. So it does feel like a data issue. The other assumption that we can often make is that it's a talent issue. Maybe the wrong leader is in the wrong role, they're running the wrong department, or maybe people just need better management. After watching this play out in a number of companies, I've noticed something different. While the numbers are usually telling us a version of the truth, they aren't telling us why. Said another way, the numbers don't tell us the root cause. What's usually happening is much simpler. Different parts of the business are operating on different rhythms. Sales has a cadence, operation has another, finance has another. So in this scenario, everyone's working hard, productivity is high, people are busy, and we wouldn't quite label it chaos, but underneath, each department is running on its own timeline. So what does that mean? It could look like that one team plans their week differently than another. One team could close things out on a different cycle. Also, it shows itself in escalations. So one group could escalate one way, another group could escalate another. They could use different reporting lines, different layers to escalate issues. So even though everyone's doing their job, the organization is never really moving together. It's like a group of people rowing a boat, but everyone's rowing at different speeds. So it's moving forward. It's just not moving forward easily or at the right speed. It takes more effort than it needs to. It's hard. And that's why leadership ends up getting pulled back into the issues and getting stuck in the middle of everything. That's why it feels hard because rhythms don't line up and leaders need to step in and reconnect the pieces. When I start looking at the operations of the company, I look at three important things first. The first, of course, is decision rhythm. How does the business actually make decisions week to week? Not what the org chart says, not what the process document says, but how do decisions move from person to person and through the company? Is there a clear cadence where issues get surfaced and decisions are made and teams move forward? Or do things kind of happen when someone raises a concern? If decisions don't move through the company in a consistent manner, it seems like everything is somewhat of an improvisation. The second is handoffs. Where does work move from one team to another? Sales to operations, operations to finance, procurement to production, as an example. These transition points are usually where the issues are and where the most friction starts. Not because we don't have capable people, but because two different teams are operating on slightly different clocks. And the third and final thing that I look for is, what is the definition of done? We've heard the saying, what does good look like? It's like that, except not necessarily good, but done. It sounds simple, but it's rarely consistent across a business. So, for example, a team will think a task is finished and pass it off to the next, and the next team doesn't actually consider that finished. They then themselves have to either do rework, or decisions and tasks get passed back and forth from team to team. Now, you multiply that across several teams, and that slows your business right down. So, when companies start aligning decision rhythms, handoffs, and definition of done, execution feels way smoother. And not because people are working harder, but the business finally has a shared rhythm. What I've noticed over the years is that leaders will end up chasing these symptoms. They invest in better tools, they'll add new roles, and they introduce more layers of reporting. And these make sense. These are really good steps to take in a lot of the cases, but it's actually simpler than that. It's really around the edges where root causes are and where the real problems get solved and we keep them from returning. If the underlying rhythm of the business never changes, the friction might get solved temporarily, but it's going to come back. And of course, when that tension returns, it slows decision making. It shows up as tension between the teams. And of course, leaders are getting pulled into more conversations again. They know how decisions are made and they know what done actually means. And suddenly, leadership isn't needed in every conversation anymore. And that's when operations start supporting the business instead of slowing it down. If you recognized your business somewhere in this video, you're not alone. I see this pattern in a lot of growing companies. This channel is where I talk about operational leadership, scaling founder-led businesses, and how to build systems that start supporting the company instead of slowing it down. If that's useful to you, follow along. I'll see you in the next one.